Hello, welcome back to We Love the State. This is the state's favorite podcast. Happy Pride Month, everybody. Great to be here. I'm your host. I totally lost track of where I was going with that.
You were so excited about Pride Month. You
exactly.
Just lost your track.
Anyway, well, to my left there, that's my good friend and co-host Ben DeJong. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing good. Man, it's been a fun 24 hours, 36 hours now.
Oh man.
I don't know if anybody's ever been on Twitter recently and kind of caught what's going on, but man, you talk about separating the wheat from the chaff. Like, it's been very interesting to see like how people have come down on the bromance split.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And people really showing like how much they support the one big beautiful bill or not. I mean, we'll just get right into it. Elon Musk and Donald Trump had a ugly, very public breakup yesterday, and came to a head when Elon Musk said, let me pull up the tweet here.
You mean what kind of started it all?
Well, I mean, yeah.
What
do you want
to
off? What? Let's go into what started it all.
Well, it sounded. Was it just a couple days ago? Elon went to the White House, and it was kind of like a public. I'm not doing Doge anymore. Kind of like and everything seemed to be fine. And then as soon as that was over, Elon started kind of like calling out the big, beautiful bill and saying, this is not what we signed up for. This is going to add trillions to the national debt. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I was brought in to try to prevent.
Right.
And you're not even being neutral now with the budget. You're just piling on trillions of dollars. And I think and I really liked his quote. He said, you can be big or you can be beautiful, but you can't be both.
Right.
And that was very poignant. And I think that got, Trump's feathers ruffled. And so he took to it. It's almost too bad because Trump's just basically Truth Social now. I mean, he'll post some of his, Truth Social posts on X. So they're having a war, but on two different platforms. So it was interesting to see some of the stuff, like people were having to do screen grabs of Trump's posts on Truth Social and then, posting them on X, next to what Elon was saying. But man, it was just kind of escalated from there.
Oh yeah. So it escalated. And then let's see, yesterday, June 5th, a day that will go down in infamy.
Today's D-Day, right? Yesterday. So it's definitely right around. I mean, the war theme continues.
So Elon Musk tweets, time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they've not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. So far, I have not come across one single person that's like, he's in the Epstein files, like this has caught zero people by surprise. Like, well, all the people who were really pushing for the Epstein files to be released, they were like, we're probably going to see Donald Trump in there.
Well, and if it does get released, I mean, it's Trump's, security agency that reports to him. So if he wants to scrub those files, I'm sure that they could either redact or, just white out his name.
Yeah.
But like, a lot of people are like saying that, Elon brought his son around, Trump. And it's like, if he thought he was a pedophile, then why would he, have his kids around? And
if they have any like recorded, like typed out lines of dialogue from like people on the client list, like there's not enough whiteout in the world to keep that orange from seeping through, because they're going to be like, Mr. Blank was like, this is the best child trafficking ring I've ever seen. Everybody knows it.
Well, and that's the thing is somebody else pointed out, like, just because you're on the client list doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, I guess it depends on what you consider the client list to be. Are they just people that have worked with Epstein, that had partied with Epstein, that had been to Epstein Island and have taken money from Epstein? Or then I think there's that next level of, yeah, these are the people who've been repeatedly, taking, the special favors on the island. And so
Right.
it's just because, Elon said that he's on the list doesn't necessarily make him a pedo. So,
Right. I mean, yeah, that's true. I one of I think that the reason that we haven't gotten those files, and when we do, we're going to get probably a horribly redacted version of those files. We're never really going to know everybody who's on that list. But I think it's because people who are quote unquote on our side are on that list.
I think both sides.
I think there's prominent Democrats, there's prominent Republicans, there's prominent people who are probably independent types, people who are seen as populist heroes. Those are probably on that list too. I mean, it was a blackmail organization. And so you can guarantee that as soon as they saw somebody that could kind of uproot that system emerge, they probably went after him hard.
Well, and it's crazy because even Pam Bondi was like, we can't release this because of a national security interests. And it's like the fact that you can come right out and say that it was in partly run by the national security state, like our taxpayers funded this, and you were going to admit that, and then nobody gets fired, no policies are changing. That's just, I mean, you can't hate your government enough.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it really makes you appreciate Aaron McIntyre, because, and I know a lot of people do this, but he's the one that I see do it the most consistently. But it's like he'll say something that some journalist getting caught in a lie, or some politician getting caught in a lie, and he just says, you don't hate them enough. Constant little reminder to these are evil people. These are evil people who do not want good things.
Yeah, and we're paying for it. That's just,
we're paying for it. Yeah,
which is just insanity.
Yeah,
and it's somebody else was saying, it's getting so ridiculous. This is the vestiges of a dying empire. Between the infighting and the just blatant fraud and abuse and the spending that is just astronomical. I did a kind of a deep dive on I'd have to look it up again to see, but like a trillion, let me see if I can find it. Like a trillion seconds ago is like the Middle Ages. It's crazy. People don't understand what a trillion actually is. So yeah, for context, 36 trillion hours ago is 4.11 billion years ago. That's just insanity. Nuts. People just don't, these numbers get thrown around, and it's just, a trillion. And then, now they're like, well, they're going to implement 9 billion of Doge cuts into a rescission package, but then they're going to increase the debt by 4 trillion. It's such a joke. But I don't think people were like, oh, 9 billion. That's a great. They're cutting government.
Your typical Midwestern town storage facility has 100 units, and with $100 bills, each one of those storage units can hold about $1 billion. In 100, if they're stacked floor to ceiling, you got about $1 billion in one storage unit. Okay, so imagine 10 of those. Imagine 10 small town storage unit facilities. That's $1 trillion. All right. Now you would need 360 of those stacked on top of one another. That's our national debt. That's such an insanely huge number. There was a reel that I saw with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he was talking about just the wealth of the richest man in the world, which is Elon Musk. All right. So if you took all of his money in $100 bills and stretched them out end to end, it would wrap around the earth 3 times, and it would then daisy chain all the way out to the surface of the moon. All right. Like, and we're talking about a number that's 1,000 times higher than that.
Yeah. And I think that's what, Elon is calling out appropriately. And I mean, I can't remember. Tesla stock was hit. I think he lost billions yesterday, just because he took a stand. And there's not that many people in politics or in any that is really willing to kind of destroy themselves in a way, but I'm standing on principle. And you have to hand it to the guy, because we don't have very many people like that. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about, Elon and PayPal Mafia and Starlink and, ties to Palantir and all that, that's maybe that's true, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that this guy is calling out the government and the whole GOP and saying you're fraudsters and you're liars and you're destroying America. And man, it's crazy to see the people that are still sticking behind Trump. I'm like, you're starting to really look and sound like the Democrats.
Watch the episode of Timcast that they did about this whole thing. Every single person at that table was like, wow, what is Elon Musk thinking? It's like, what do you mean? What is he thinking? And it's one of those things where the best thing about Tim Pool is that he platforms our people, but man, he is so embedded in that Trump cult. He really is the figurehead of the cultish aspect of the MAGA movement, and it's really unfortunate, because I'm like, because here's the thing, whatever, I was on X yesterday, I saw some back and forth, but the overwhelming thing that I saw was people saying yeah, the one big beautiful bill is terrible. It's awful. It adds trillions to our deficit. And they're trying to play these games where it's well, actually it adds some to the deficit, but in the long run it does this and this, and it actually lowers. It's going to grow the economy. And it's you don't grow the economy by adding, what was it, 5 trillion to it? I mean,
4.7, I think.
Yeah, almost $5 trillion. We're talking about $41 trillion in debt. Well, 41 trillion.
Our interest payments already are over, I think it's 1.1 or close to 1.2. And I think that we're talking about 20% of tax revenue is now going to pay the credit card. Can you imagine, that's your, almost a quarter of your income paying.
Oh yeah. The interest accrued every year on the debt that we owe is over $1 trillion now.
It's becoming the biggest line item in our budget. Is that?
Yeah. So it's listen, Trump people, you have to take a step back. You have to take a step back.
Take the L on this one.
Take the L on this one. The one big beautiful bill is terrible. Stop talking about the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. First of all, the no tax on overtime thing, it only applies to people who make up to $80,000. So anything over $80,000, if you make overtime, it doesn't apply to you. And there's a lot of people who that's where they make their money, is on overtime. And you have to make $80,000 or more if you want to live comfortably, And so it's just kind of well, the people who, I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of people that no tips or no tax would end up pushing them over that 80,000. So it could actually penalize them if you're in a certain range. And if you're lower, if you're only making 50,000 a year and maybe that is going to benefit you. Like,
Right.
it's going to give you another maybe five to 10,000. You're still well beyond, well below the poverty level. I mean,
Right.
you can't survive in the U.S. I mean, granted, I don't know what our medium household income is anymore, but like, I don't know how anybody. I mean, you have to. I mean, if you're married, both people have to work. There isn't. I mean, unless you're either well off in a certain maybe career path, but like, it's not pretty out there. And then
Yeah.
Trump was like, America's it's doing great. It's the we inflation's down and costs are down and jobs are and pay rates are, and like all just like, you might as well have people saying Biden is fit
Sharp
and
as a
sharp
tack.
as a tack, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, we've already been lied to for long enough, and then you got Trump coming in here and continuing that. It's just bleh.
Yeah.
Well, what
Yeah.
do you think that they're gonna hug and make up, or do you think is this gonna be like a
Allegedly, there is a phone call scheduled for today for them to kiss and make up. Um, and so what I guess that'll determine how, if Trump is willing to listen to reason and if Elon is willing to stick to his guns. Because if they come out of this, hey guys, we talked about it, and you know what, the one big beautiful bill is great, then we'll know, like, he really wants those government contracts.
contracts?
You
Yep.
know, so these are people that everybody should be very skeptical of, because they're very wealthy, very powerful people who were talking to us, that talk directly to us. And so it's like, we should be skeptical of every single move that they make and every single thing that they say, you know, because they could be, I like what we are the kind of people, it is not hard to figure us out. We're not a mystery because we are so outspoken about, what we support and what we don't support, that it's like, man, if you it should be so easy to like come in and like, hey, I'm one of you guys, like, hello fellow kids, like one of those things, because we give them the playbook for how they can infiltrate us every single day, as long as if they're on Liberty Twitter, or if they're on MAGA Twitter, whatever you want to call it, like, we say it right there, you know.
Well, and just there's such a lack of principle over party. And that should be your litmus test of whether you are playing fair or whether you are playing dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not consistent and you don't have principles, that you're willing to stick your neck out sometimes
Mm-hmm.
and stand on principle. And it's really sad that that's just so lost in American culture these days, is just a lack of principle. And, your principles may change, education, and the more you learn, you may have to start, adapting a little bit, but like the whole, like, it's us versus them. And so if they do it, we're justified in doing it, and all that, the mental gymnastics to get around stated principles is, yeah, it's like Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, saying, "I've always been a fiscal conservative." It's like, no, you aren't, you idiot. Like, just slimy, like spineless people like that, who just, depending on where the wind's blowing, they change up constantly. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so transparent now, thanks to Twitter. And I mean, maybe it's just because thanks to you, I'm on it constantly. But like, it's so, I mean, if you educate yourself on some of these people, like, you can see right through them very, very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. There was something that you had mentioned, that like, well, they do it, so it's okay for us to do it. And that's a sentiment I've heard a lot coming from the right over the past few years. And there's a Stone Toss comic. I don't know if you ever check out Stone Toss's.
Mm-mm.
He's I'll send you some of them, but he is he's a right-wing web comic guy, and some of the stuff is like crazy funny, but some of them you look at them and especially from like a libertarian, especially like an ANCAP point of view. You look at them and you're like, you really missed the mark on that one. One of them has to do with, it shows this guy, and it's a close-up of his face, and he goes, see, we don't want to do basically what you're saying. We don't want to do what they do because that wouldn't make us any better than them. And then it like zooms out in the next panel, and he's talking. The guy is like handcuffed, talking to another handcuffed guy, and they're on their knees, and there's communists behind him about to shoot him. It's a funny comic, but it's like, it's one of those where it's like you kind of miss the point.
Mark.
You miss the mark, because what they're saying is like, listen, either we start going fast and loose like the left does so we can gain some ground, or else we'll find ourselves in these gulags, or it's like, put them in the gulags first. And it's like, man, you're just continuing an endless cycle of atrocity after atrocity after atrocity after atrocity, and it's just like the problem is that you have both of these parties who want to control the most powerful machine that has ever existed, the most powerful, deadly meat grinder that's ever existed, and that's what you want. You want control of that machine, so like, I gotta say, at least with Stone Toss in that comic, he's being honest about it. It's like, hey, we want to control the machine so they don't control the machine.
It's instead like the ring of power.
Exactly. It's the ring of power. Instead of ever like entertaining the idea of like, why don't we dismantle the machine? Maybe that's the biggest problem here. Maybe it's that there exists a machine that can do this to people and justify it, and so it's one of those where it's just like, man, it is the One Ring, and it's like, it's crazy that he misses that,
Well, and it's even crazy to think like the whole Palantir, which is another great tie into Lord of the Rings. I didn't even realize that was the all-seeing stone.
Yeah.
It's perfect analogy.
The company that developed it,
Peter Thiel.
Yeah. His company is called, or I think they developed another program called Mithril.
Yep.
Which is like elven steel,
Yeah. I think that's their military arm that they're using to spy and track Palestinians right now. Mm-hmm. But just the idea of like, you're building this database on all Americans, and then you're going to hand it off to Kamala Harris in 4 years. Like, why would you build something with that kind of power that could be so easily abused? Not thinking, or you think you're going to be in charge forever. So you're, omnipotent. Like, no, it's going to be handed off. You're going to hand those
you're going to hand it off to, because listen, first of all, if you do this, that gives the left the right to say, listen, vote for me because the other side has this AI powered super registry of people that they don't like. That's dangerous. That's 1984 stuff. And they will have a good point. And then as soon as they get into power, they'll use that. They will use that against people like us, like what do you think they will do with that?
Yeah, you think they should crack down on free speech on college campuses now because of, Israel and, quote unquote anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Kamala was talking about censoring Joe Rogan. So you have a database that can track, all social media. I mean, they're talking about tying in your medical record, your purchase history, your taxes, your location. Like, it is, I mean, it's probably stuff that's already gathered, but it's divided up between multiple agencies. Right. So this is basically just turning everything into a giant NSA. And that's just, that's a scary, scary world. And it makes you start, because I do a lot of driving, and there's a lot of Amish communities up north. I'm like, that's starting to look pretty tempting.
Yeah.
Like, just go completely off grid and, be in a community. And it's really the only way to avoid, almost a certain future. I don't know if there's a way to stop it. It doesn't seem like there's anyone in DC that's willing to to really lead the charge on it. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene did note that she missed that piece because there is a provision in the big beautiful bill that the states are not, for 10 years, the states are not allowed to stop any advancements in AI.
That's crazy.
And so, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I mean, she voted for it, but she's like, we didn't have time to read the bill, and I didn't see, and this is completely, antithetical to the feudal society that we're supposed to be, as states are supposed to have autonomy.
Yeah.
And to basically say that the federal government says you can't touch AI. And that's partly because I think Palantir, because it's all going to be AI driven.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's basically saying the federal government can, railroad over anything the states want to stop.
So for future historians looking back on now, hopefully they'll find this episode. We're calling it that the seed that eventually grew into Big Brother was this stupid bill. Here's where it started. Here's what starts World War, whichever the last one is.
And I think the Patriot Act was probably that cracked the door open.
Oh yeah.
We're basically now we're running full steam ahead.
This is Patriot Act 2.0.
Yep.
So for all the future historians who are running to this episode of We Love the State.
Yeah, we told you so.
We told you so. And whenever I said that this big beautiful bill was the seedling, I meant to say it was actually the Patriot Act from from the early 2000s. That's what I meant to say.
It's kind of a snowball. It's like everything the government does, it only gets worse.
Yeah. Yep. Totally agree. So
I did see a funny meme that somebody posted. Vladimir Putin is willing to negotiate a peace terms between Trump and Elon. I thought that was pretty funny.
I saw that one too. The memes that have been coming out of this Elon Musk and Trump breakup are so funny.
Yeah.
I like it. It's been yesterday at work is when it was all going down, and I was just like, man, I was glued to my phone. I was like, what's going on? What are they going to say?
It's a perfect soap opera.
It is. And it's like, it is a soap opera for politically minded people. This is our Young and the Restless.
General Hospital. We got you beat.
Yeah.
DC drama.
Yeah. Oh man. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think are the chances that, I mean, if he is, I wouldn't be surprised, but do you think that's why, or do you think what Elon Musk said about Trump has any legitimacy to it? Like, do you think he really is on there and that's why it's taking so long? Or do you think a lot of his friends, Trump. Do you think it's a lot of his friends?
I think it's just almost everybody. It's a who's list.
Yeah.
I mean, you got entertainment, you got people, Hollywood people, you got politicians, you've got music industry people. I mean, that's a blackmail ring that started. I mean, like 9/11 was almost at the height of that blackmail ring, and it went on for, well over 10 years.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that list of like who's who? And there's those people. I mean, they're in those positions for a reason. Like there's no way that list is coming out. And if even they're talking about, all of a sudden there is a video. I think Cash or Bongino was like, oh yeah, there's a video. And it's like, no, there's not. Even if they try to release one, nobody's going to believe it. It's
nobody's going to
buy
it.
AI generated. I mean, the guy hung himself with paper sheets. There's no way paper sheets. There's a reason they're made out of paper, because you can't hang yourself. They tear, they rip.
Yeah.
And, if there's some dark video where somebody, a figure, quote unquote, is hanging there, I'm like, It's everybody knows it's a lie, and that's I think one of the greatest things with Cash and Bongino is they're not good liars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I mean, that interview where they're like, "Oh yeah, he totally killed himself." You're like, dude,
There might as well have been an ISIS guy with a
with a gun behind,
balaclava, yeah, with an AK-47 to his back. He was sweating bullets.
Yeah, both of their eyes, and I think Cash's was like that, and Bonjima was like he couldn't even make eye contact with the interviewer. He was just looking at the floor, going, "Yeah, I saw all the documents. He definitely killed himself." It's like you guys should have brushed up, maybe talk to some people at the CIA to figure out like what's the best way to lie.
Yeah,
because they didn't do their homework. Because that was just
well.
But that's what's great is I think it's just it shows that the lies aren't just coming from the left.
Yeah. It's there. This second Trump term has definitely done a lot to show that, like, hey, the right is just as scummy as the left is, and I mean, so here's the other thing, and like, this is the new We Love the State format, because it used to be that everything is horrible and nothing is good, but like. I've really gotten into the habit of finding the silver lining on every dark cloud, and first of all, it helps me sleep at night having that, or developing that habit. But like, honestly, like we can look at this whole interaction between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and there is a major silver lining. First of all, Elon Musk is talking about creating a new political party, and it's like one that actually speaks to the 80% of the people who live in this country. That is a good thing,
That's good for the libertarian. I mean, that's not, I mean, our national party is kind of I think it's probably been a shit show for majority of its existence, but it gives us a chance and a spotlight. And man, can you imagine? I mean, granted, I saw some funny memes about like, Elon, you could buy the Libertarian Party for $1 million, like, or take over the Libertarian Party. I don't think it would be that hard.
That's what I saw. That's what I saw. Clint Russell saying was like, it is way cheaper for you to just take over this existing party than to create a brand new one from scratch.
Right, and we definitely are aligned with him. I mean, Elon's, he's posted so many videos and quotes from Hayek and from Mises and from Rothbard, Milton Friedman, and I think he gets, especially on the fiscal side of things, he's very much aligned with us,
dude. So many people there was, and I don't remember who was the first one to put it out there, but there's so many people who are pushing for him and Dave Smith to have a conversation on Joe Rogan.
Oh yeah,
that could be a huge, like that could be a defining moment in American history. If we're talking about the world's richest man sits down with Dave Smith, and like, imagine, because here's one thing about Elon is that he listens to good arguments.
Well, and he's autistic, so he's going to fit right in.
Oh yeah.
One of us. So yeah, Elon, if you're listening, because I know you probably are, for sale.
Yeah. Yeah, for real.
Please.
but I mean, somebody like that involved with the Libertarian Party, man, that could change the course of this country.
Well, he would run it like a business. And the problem with us is with the infighting has been so tolerated, if not allowed or amplified. And he would be like, no, you're not getting anywhere. So like, there would definitely be bylaws discussions and being like, you know what, it's voluntary to join, but it's also up to the organization to kick you out if you're, distracting, or if you're ruining, or preventing advancement of party goals.
And like, that is something that we need so bad. Like, there's this idea that like we have to be welcoming to absolutely everybody. But it's like, oh, okay. There was an episode that Dave Smith did after he announced that he wasn't
running for president. Everybody was mad at him for a bit. And then he released this episode, and then I totally understood it. He was talking about being at National, and somebody came up to him and started asking him questions, and it's a grown man in like a cowboy hat and roller skates and a thong. And he was looking at this and he was just like, how can I take any of this seriously? You know? And it's just like the dancing naked guy from
Michigan.
When was that? 2012 when that happened? Was he from Michigan?
Yep.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And apparently he had like a flesh colored thong on, but
yeah,
still that's what hits the news.
Yeah. And it's like that thing, especially like as an organization, we have to look at that and be like, that is unforgivable. It's unforgivable. The amount of damage that you've done to our public image, you know, because it's like that's part of the free market is our public image, you know, that is how we attract new, you know, quote unquote clients, you know, that like that's how we make moves is our public image. And we allowed a dancing naked guy to go up there, you know, and it's not like, I don't know. There should be people there should be a dress code to these conventions. And if you don't live up to that dress code, I'm sorry, you can't come in.
Well, in security, I mean, there's people on mics that are, you know, threatening speakers.
Yeah.
And they should immediately be removed. Like the idea that you have to have a vote on the entire body to remove somebody who is being obstinate or threatening at a convention. No, you're out. You lose your privilege.
There's so many members of the party where that is what they are there for. They are there for that drama.
Attention-seeking whores.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they're there for. And it's like
grandstanding,
and there's some people who their whole lives revolve around getting to the next national convention so they can get on that microphone and talk to all libertarians about the dumbest stuff in the world, you know, or pretend like every hill is worth dying on, you know,
for the sake of like libertarian purity. And it's just delusional because we're nowhere near, you know, a perfect libertarian world. And so the idea that you're going to argue from that perspective as your starting point is pure like anarchy.
Yeah.
There's just, I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I think all of us have gotten into those arguments, and maybe we go down certain rabbit holes that's what we do. We're deep thinkers. We process, you know, information. We are always asking why, always trying to figure out like what is the root cause. And it definitely tends to appeal to that autistic type. But, you know, sometimes you got to be throttled and just to say, hey, you've gone too far, or this is in an inappropriate venue, or that's not how you speak to somebody else, like especially in like executive meetings. Like I've been in executive meetings and you would be fired and thrown out if the way that libertarians act and behave in meetings.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No serious organization out there would ever tolerate something like that. And I feel like that's the right word. No serious organization would tolerate that, but we're not a serious organization, you know?
Right. But somebody like an Elon, where it's like, I can bring you up to the level and to really compete between the cash and the ability to bring in talent, and promotion, and like, I mean, he would take the LP. I mean, I honestly think in 3 to 4 years, we would have Senate seats. We would have, you know, state and national. We would have representative seats. But again, I don't think he would tolerate the current behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. And
there's a lot of libertarians that would not want him to do that because they value their right to be obstinate more than the achieving party goals.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
It is, but it's like these are the conversations that libertarians need to be having. You know, like we need to be having the tough discussions. When our own former chair goes to a Bitcoin conference and comes back saying, by the way, the liberty movement is so much larger than the Libertarian Party. Like, and she said that at these crypto conferences, like the Libertarian Party is seen by the larger liberty movement as a joke. They all see us as a joke. And on top of that, she's like, that's like where all the dog fighting happens. If you guys have seen Angela McArdle's most recent live stream, like this is her reporting back from these, you know, crypto conferences and Bitcoin conferences. It's like the larger liberty movement sees us as an absolute joke, and all they see is the infighting. And so it's like the larger liberty movement that's bigger than the libertarians, like they don't take us seriously. They don't see us as helping in any way. They see us as making the situation worse. And it's because of our level of tolerance, you know? So
yeah,
it's like,
we could quadruple the size of the LP if we were to be able to bring those type of people in.
Right. Or it's like, I don't know. We need to have a universalized litmus test, you know, and just be like, hey, and the litmus test really should be, do you support expanding the government or shrinking the government? That's it. You know,
freedom of association, anti-war. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a long list.
Mm-hmm. I even think, and I don't know, crucify me, libertarians, if you want, but it's like, I even think there is room for people who might not necessarily be as rabidly anti-war as people like you and me, you know, like if the end goal is like, hey, we are here to shrink the size of the federal government, but I think that, you know, we should be helping out Ukraine or helping out Israel or something like that. Like, I think there's room for people like that if the larger goal is like, we should shrink the size of the federal government, you know, and then we can hash out those arguments in our own time. But at the end of the day, we have a unified goal of shrinking the size of the federal government, you know, and because if that's the unified goal, like, we are essentially an anti-war organization, you know, because at its core, we want to shrink the size of the military industrial complex, you know, like, so I don't know. And it's like, and it's not to say that I'm, you know, trying to justify either one of those wars. Like I am an anti-war person, but I don't know. I feel like all of this really needs to be re-examined. You know, I don't think they had everything perfectly figured out back in 1971 or whenever the party was first established, 1981. And it's like, we should go back and, you know, rethink our strategy, rethink who our audience is and should be, you know,
and what the party's purpose is. I mean,
what is the purpose?
What is our goal?
Yeah.
And what is going to help us achieve the goal, and what's going to hinder that? And if it's going to hinder that goal, then it shouldn't be tolerated.
And the goal should not be liberty in our lifetime.
Oh, I can't stand that statement.
That is
such a stupid pipe dream. It's like you're delusional just because you're saying that. It took over 100 years to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And you think it's going to get fixed in your lifetime?
I think one good line. Well, one good line that I hear Tim Pool say all the time is, and I'm going to butcher this really bad, but it's like planting trees whose leaves you will never live long enough to sit under their shade. I probably butchered that really bad, but it's like that is the concept. And here's the thing, like, if you're a dad and you're listening to this, that should be a concept that you identify with, like that you're doing something not for the benefit of yourself, but the benefit of your children and your grandchildren, you know? And so it's like we need to have a realistic timeline for like things that we want to do, and things are not going to happen. Like there are things that we want that are not going to happen while we are alive, and we have to come to terms with that, you know.
Yeah, it's not. There's no magic, a silver bullet that, tomorrow we get a pure libertarian as president. Even in that scenario, there's no way they all of a sudden just end Social Security and cut the federal government. It's not, one person's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you're kind of seeing that, because there was a lot of hope with, not necessarily Trump, but RFK and Tulsi and Cash. Like these were people that were very principled, and you could like how quickly they got eaten by the machine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I've got another silver lining though. So there has been a massive paradigm shift over the last like I'd say since Biden came in office, and maybe it started happening before. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. But it's like, hey, Cash and Bongino got into their offices, and when they came out and they said Epstein did kill himself, a resounding, you guys are lying. All right. It was not, hey, well, they were handpicked by our orange Lord and Savior, so therefore we have to believe what they say. There are a couple of people out there who did say that, but the overwhelming majority are like, you guys are lying, you know? That, like, imagine that coming from the wider Republican base back in like 2002 when we had Bush and Cheney in office. If you didn't toe the GOP line, if you didn't toe the they hate us because of our freedom line back then, like you were an other, like you hated America, you hated freedom, like I don't know. I'm sounds weird, but like I'm very, very proud of like how far the Republicans have come since then, because
I think like libertarianism, the idea of it and the principles behind it is a big part what has caused this kind of split, because there's a lot of people on a lot of big platforms. I hear libertarianism. It's become much more mainstream.
Yeah.
I think people understand what it is.
Yeah.
And to your point, like the split with Elon and Trump, I would say over 50% of the MAGA crowd or the GOP at large, at least on X, I mean, it's probably not
are like libertarian leaning,
but they are more aligned with Elon than Trump on this topic.
I mean, look at somebody like Charlie Kirk. All right. Charlie Kirk is like, he is definitely a shill for Israel, like without a doubt, but if you look at his stance on every other issue except for Israel, he's good on them. He's good on all these stances. He's
from
good
a liberty perspective.
From the liberty perspective, he's pretty good. And even from the more like traditionalist perspective, like he's good on a lot of these issues. It's right up until you get to like the cops or you get to Israel where you're just like, ugh, and he just has some bad takes. He recently had a Oxford debate, and it was about Israel, and there was some like 20-year-old college kid that whenever it came to Israel, he smoked him. He smoked him in front of in the middle of that room. Every other thing, it was a dumb 20-year-old college kid who with his dumb 20-year-old opinions. But whenever it got to Israel, that kid crucified him in that room. So
yeah, it's kind of sad that's the only way they win is if arguing with mushy, 19-year-olds, mushy brain 19-year-olds.
But like, it's like, I mean,
but to see even a kid basically come back and call them out on that take.
Yeah. And it's because it's like, listen, man, your AIPAC money only does so much for you. Your AIPAC money doesn't stop you from looking like an idiot when the Israelis now and this is my hot take, the Israelis now are the modern day Nazis with what they are doing to the Palestinians. They're ethnically cleansing Gaza. Their plans for greater Gaza, like
Greater
how do you
Israel.
greater Israel, like they are our modern day Nazis. Like that's how we need to start seeing him, and people are starting to see it that way. Like, hey, they're bombing children.
Lebanon.
They just bombed Lebanon yesterday.
Yep.
Like, so it's like they are expansionist. They are an ethno state that is expanding in the Middle East. It's harder and harder for them to deny that they're an ethno state. Oh, we've got Palestinians who live here. Yeah, okay, but like. You have they're doing genetic testing on people coming into their country to determine what level of Jew they are. Like that, it's so hilariously ironic. It's not hilarious, but it is so horrifically ironic that the Jews who went through 1,000 years of pogroms, they went through everything that happened in World War II. They went through the Night of Broken Glass and all that stuff. And now, 100 years later, I'm calling them out. They are the Nazis of our time. It's undeniable to the point to where, hey, Pierce Morgan, who wasn't an Israel shill up until like a week ago, is finally like, you can't hide it anymore. Like there's no defending the starvation of children.
Yeah, I didn't think with Pierce, I didn't think that was ever going to happen, because every interview immediately was, do you condemn Hamas? Like there was, he was that
he was that guy
piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that just, it does show that he think like Tim Pool, he does platform a lot of good people on his show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you do that long enough, it's going to eventually rub off on you if you are intellectually curious and honest. Now, there are some people, like what I don't like with Tim Pool is he's very similar to like Ben Shapiro in his level of arrogance.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can really change somebody's mind or perspective when they're that full of themselves. But if you are open and honest and you're willing to hear both sides and absorb information, eventually you're going to see the light.
Yeah, there's definitely no point in trying to bring up the problem with Israel with Tim Pool, because first of all, he's a master at deflection, but second of all, it's like his official stance is we shouldn't be paying for it, which is like, you know what, that is good enough. It is good enough that you're like, we shouldn't be paying for it. He also thinks that we shouldn't be paying for weapons in Ukraine. That's good enough. You don't like, I really don't care where you fall on the side of Israel or Gaza or Russia or Ukraine. I ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't care where you fall on that side of the fence. What I care about is, do you think we should be paying for it? Do you think that my tax dollars that I worked for should be going towards putting bullets in the heads of kids, or like these, or the drone warfare happening in Ukraine? Like, do you think that my money that I go to work for should be paying for that? If, my kids are too young to have a job, but it's like, do you think they should be paying for that?
Because we're going to pay for it, and they're going to pay for it. And that's where even it would end the war. If we didn't pay for the Ukraine war, they would have had a settlement right off the bat. Yep. If we weren't giving Israel all of the weapons, and I think we're giving them over $5 billion a year, and that's paying
the total
free college,
amount,
free healthcare.
The total amount is upwards of like $350 billion
that we've given them
so far. $350 billion.
They would not be able to do what they're doing without that money. So you do, if you do just stick to the principle of no foreign aid, no arming, it would resolve the conflict pretty quickly.
Right. So
it is kind of a not necessarily a sneaky way of doing it, because I remember, who was the Indian guy that's running for governor for Ohio?
Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah, that was his kind of pitch too, where he tried to get around, because a couple of times that he was on Dave Smith, and he was just like, I'm not going to say what Israel should or shouldn't do, but we shouldn't be paying for it.
Yeah.
So
I'm one of those weirdos where it's like if I'm looking at it completely objectively, all right, Israel as a state was established 90 years ago, 80 years ago. I don't know, something like that. It's like, that's long enough to where I'm like, okay, like they're not going anywhere, you know? And so it's like, would the right thing to do be for somebody to come in and kick out all the Israelis? It's like, no, because that creates a whole other immigration problem, you know? And also the more I sort of learn about Jewish history, the more I kind of understand, like, these have been a nomadic people that used to have a kingdom a long time ago. And like, whether you want to get into the legitimacy of the OG kingdom of Israel and Judah or not, like, that's a conversation for another time. Saying that for thousands of years they were nomadic. And actually, I don't know when Israel fell, but you know, for a long time they were nomadic, going all over the place. And it's like, I can understand how some of them would be rabid nationalists, being like, this is our soil, this is where our, you know, our really blood and soil about it, you know? And so it's like, because of that, I'm like, okay, I think that they have a right to defend themselves, but in the libertarian sense of, like, if someone's attacking you, you go and you defend yourself against that person, you know, or that specific group of people that have attacked you. You don't level cities, you know, you don't level apartment building because there's hospitals and schools, because there might be one bad guy in the basement, you know. Right. Even if there is a bad guy or 10 bad guys in the basement, it doesn't matter. You don't bomb a hospital because there's bad guys inside. You know, you bomb a hospital if there are only bad guys inside. But that's what they believe. They believe that, you know, and this is why I call them Nazis, because it's like they don't distinguish between innocent Palestinians and Hamas. They don't. They think they're all like subhuman scum anyway. And so that's what gives them the ability to treat these Palestinians like animals.
Right. Well, and I remember hearing the argument of the, you know, Jewish are the superior culture. They don't say superior race, because that wouldn't play very well, but It's the same damn thing.
It is.
And that's, I think in any war,
that's when you have to ask them, like, okay, is Judaism a culture? Is it a religion, or is it a race? You know, because if you say, well, it's all three. Okay. So like, you're saying it's a race.
Superior race.
Yeah.
And that's another ugly part of, I think, war in general, because I remember, you know, between Iraq and Afghanistan, you know, even my brother was in the military, and there was this culture of, those are just sand N-words.
Yeah.
And they were, you know, they're just sheep herders, and they're, you know, they just screw their animals, and they're so backward that killing them is just like killing dogs.
Yeah.
And I think you almost program your military to see it that way, because then it makes it easier to, you know, follow through with orders. Like, you know, between the drone bombing that, you know, Obama did, they talk about some of, you know, those remote pilots that are sitting in Langley or in the Pentagon or wherever, and they're just, you know, mass murdering entire families and weddings. Mm-hmm. And it's so detached from, like, you're not pulling a gun and shooting somebody in the head and seeing the ramifications. You're just staring at a TV screen. But even that, you have to look at them as just animals. And that's, I mean, what's really sad is I think with the Israel issue is they call it out. They're very transparent about it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas maybe it's a little bit more hidden in, in normal war. You don't go right out and go, well, we can kill them because they're inferior, they're inferior. Like the fact that people can't see that in the parallels between, a lot of the, Nazi rhetoric.
Yeah.
It's just obvious.
Well, even, I mean, there's even a growing population in Israel of people who are, because you got to realize that Benjamin Netanyahu is like their George Bush, and or their Dick Cheney, like that's sort of the environment that you have to frame Israel with right now, is they had this horrible terrorist attack. And you're having somebody who is taking that opportunity to further their own hidden agenda, and there's a growing population within Israel of Hasidic Jews and more moderate Jews even. And they're saying like, you guys are murdering innocent Palestinians, and again, like I'm turning a new leaf. Like I'm looking at the positive side of this. Like even the inside of Israel is like is opening their eyes and being like, this is disgusting.
Yeah.
Like,
you can't carry that on as long as how long has it been? It's been how many years already?
Almost. It's been a year and a half. It was 2023, October 2023.
I mean, that's just, you see that on such a regular basis, and looks like it continually gets worse. I saw some of the videos of some of the food and water that they finally let in, and like the massive amount of thousands of people that kind of rushed the trucks, and then they just started shooting them.
Yeah. Because
it got out of control, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
That's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah. History, I think, will not look kindly on what Israel has done here. And
do you think that there's also there's a part of that the Israel narrative actually likes, because it kind of pushes that victim narrative of, or pushing like more people, because that was always, it was kind of, World War II was kind of used as a rallying cry of like, we need to, form our government. Everybody needs to move to Israel because we're being persecuted. If, it's almost like Israel wins regardless of whether they lose or they don't, because they kind of almost own both sides of the narrative.
Yeah.
It either way is good for the state of Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that there is a sect of people who are looking at it like that. Like the type of people who are like, never let a good,
tragedy go to waste.
Yeah. Never let a tragedy go to waste. Never let a good catastrophe go to waste. Like there's definitely people like that who are looking at everything happening right now, and they're like, these people are going to hate us and we're going to get rich off of it, So, but I think the silver lining for all this is, look at the public conversation. This is why platforms like X is so important. And it has its flaws. It's not perfectly free speech or whatever, but man, it's the best free speech platform we have right now. And it's like,
yeah, imagine if we didn't have it.
Exactly. And the conversations that are happening, and that's what you pay attention to. What are the topics that are being spoken about openly right now? Because I remember a time when national divorce was a fringe idea that only crazy people talked about.
Yeah, only Confederate racists. I mean, that was at least the narrative.
There are sitting members of Congress and the Senate who talk about it and promote it. Marjorie Taylor Greene, with all of her flaws, she is one person who supports the idea of national divorce, and it's that started as a fringe conversation happening on Twitter, and so it's like,
look at the conversations that have been coming out of not only the Shiloh Hendricks and Carmelo Anthony situation, but the conversations that are happening because of Israel and Gaza, the conversations that have come out of the Elon Musk and Donald Trump breakup. Like, look at the conversations that are being had surrounding those things. Those are going to be mainstream ideas in a couple of years, you know? And so it's like the conversations that are being had are, hey, maybe this century of white guilt is complete and utter nonsense, and it's not fair to our kids, and we shouldn't be buying into that. Maybe that's doing more harm than good, you know? And I think that's an excellent point. Not just doing harm for whites, but I think it does immeasurable harm for Black Americans to keep up this idea of white privilege, or that somebody is constantly keeping them down, instead of saying like, hey, you live in the best country in the world. This is the only country where you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make something of yourself, you know? And I think it's good that the conversation is putting that onus on them, saying like, hey, this is the place to pull yourself out of poverty. You know?
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about free speech is the good ideas tend to bubble up and the bad ideas tend to eventually be silenced.
Yeah.
And it's just a natural, there may be some ugliness, you know, during that back and forth, but eventually the good ideas win out. And to your point, like, it could be fringe today, but it's mainstream tomorrow. And it starts more often than not on X. I used to look at news apps like Google News to look for stories. And I start on X now. Yeah. And then if I see something, I may then research it to see, well, you know, what's so-and-so talking about or saying about it. But I always start on X now. Yep. And I think that's the case for a lot of Americans. And to look over across the pond, I can't remember the number, but it was in England. I think that they're arresting over 100 people a day for bad speech. Yeah. And there's like huge crackdowns in all of Europe. And you do have to look at yourself and be like, man, we have it pretty damn good. No, we really even do. With everything else that we're facing, the fact that we can do this, we can talk about pretty much whatever we want. And that's not the case for the majority of the world.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. So yeah, everybody pay attention to those conversations that are being had right now, and you know, pay attention to how they evolve. A lot of conversations that I'm hearing, I think will bear very good fruit. I don't know. I feel like there's a better way to say that, but anyway, I think this is a good place to wrap things up. Do you have any final thoughts, Ben?
No, I think it's again, glad we kind of ended on a positive. We kind of ran the gamut, but at the same time, it was all very founded on what's happening on X. And those are all topics that are kind of front and center that everybody's talking about and having good discussions. Again, a lot of it is horrific, but at least it's there and it's stuff that we can see and stuff that we can talk about.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, my final thoughts, I think things are going to get better. I think that we definitely have a lot of uphill battles, but I think that our country is moving in a positive direction. It doesn't always feel like it. Sometimes it feels like the world is ending, and a lot of people, they like to profit off of that fear mongering. But it's like, man, stay positive.
Zoom out sometimes.
Zoom out. Yeah.
Don't get so hyper focused on certain issues, because if you do zoom out, it's a very different picture.
And most importantly, share this podcast. Subscribe to We Love the State. Tell your friends about us. We want to grow this thing. I feel like me and Ben are in it for the long haul. I know we've had a lot of long breaks, but I think we're ready to take this thing to the next level and do some good things with it. So tell your friends about us.
let your friends know, like, hey, these guys, you don't have to tell the truth, lie to your friends, be like, this is the best podcast I've ever seen.
And that's even just a little white lie, because we're pretty damn good.
We are pretty good. So, anyway, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at Andy_Koons. I'm on TikTok too, but I haven't really utilized that platform in a while. But you can follow me on there at Andy Koons. And then Ben, where can people find you?
On X and on Instagram, those are probably my two biggest platforms that I contribute to. Both of them are under Picture This 1979. And just a shout out to Elon. My heart goes out to you.
All right. Peace out, everyone.